Keith, what's up, brother? Glad to be joining you at the American Dream campus. Is that what you call it?
Training facility?
Training facility.
Sure.
That sounds way
University?
better than university.
Academy Center.
Academies.
Academic. I don't know.
Who knows? Anyways, I'm stoked to be here. We're mutual friends with Phil Randazzo, who heads up this organization. And I think what did we meet? Like last year? About a year or so ago, maybe?
At the opening when they decided to make this the university.
Right, yeah. So, we've been able to get to know each other online on the interwebs, and I think we run in some of the same circles. So, man, I'm excited because you're on this this really fascinating journey, and one that I'm intrigued with that I would never walk myself. As of right now, I should say.
I may say that about bow hunting.
Yeah, you might, but then I'll try to convince you and get you out there on the hunt. I mean, you've really immersed yourself in the world of stand-up comedy over the past couple of years now?
Yeah, about a little over 2 years.
But is this something that's been on your radar in the past, or is it like one day you woke up, you're like, I'm gonna do stand-up comedy?
It's been on my radar for 15 years.
Really?
Yeah, man. I don't know if you know this. Probably nobody knows me on your podcast as of yet, but
they will.
I actually used to be a pastor of a church in Montana. And so I've been on stage since I was 16, 17, 18 years old, a few times a week, teaching the scriptures. And in front of hundreds of people. And I would have people come up and like, man, you should do stand-up comedy. You have amazing comedic timing. I didn't know what that meant at the time. And I was like, no thanks. I'm about the Lord's work right now. And 5 years ago, I thought, you know what? I do want to do the stand-up comedy thing. I went and hired a coach. He gave me 2 lessons, and I did nothing with it.
Really?
And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm going to regret this if I die.
What made you change? Because we'll get back to the regret.
Okay.
But what made you say, yeah, you know what? I do want to try that.
I think it was just that point in my life where I was like, I think I can do it. But the 2 year, like when I dove in hard 2 years ago,
right?
This is a very interesting story. There was a guy that came to my gym, not eloquent, kind of goofy, odd looking, and I hadn't seen him for a couple of years. I'm like, hey, how you doing, man? He's like, good. I'm like, what are you up to? He's like, I'm doing stand-up comedy. And it was this trigger for me that was like very real. I'm like, well, if you can do it, I definitely can do it. I mean, it was just that simple. But I said, how did you start? Mm-hmm. And he goes, I hired a coach, which has always been my MO for anything. If I want to get in shape, if I want to learn real estate, if I want to learn internet business, anything. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So I found out who his coach was. He told me. I reached out to the guy. Little did I know that the guy I reached out to was a legend in comedy.
This was the coach that you reached out to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Who, obviously everybody's probably heard of Andrew Dice Clay.
Sure.
This guy toured with Andrew Dice Clay for 20 years, was his best friend, had a podcast with him, did the Madison Square Garden with him.
Really?
And so this guy, he was a paid regular at the Comedy Store, which is one of the hardest things to become. Lived in a house with Sam Kinison. I mean, did the whole thing. Was so immersed, very good, and we just hit it off.
That's awesome.
And he pushed me to not just be a student, but to actually get my ass up on stage and do it.
How many people?
I said ass. Am I allowed to say ass on the show?
Okay, that's acceptable.
Okay.
How many people, or I guess what percentage? Like, are people really just taking coaching and then not actually doing anything with it? Like, why would somebody take coaching and not actually go out and perform?
They're scared.
That's all it is, fear.
Fear.
I mean, they've overcome the first obstacle, which is get yourself in the game to some degree by hiring a coach, which signifies, okay, I'm serious, but maybe also this is enough, right? Like, I'm just going to dip my toe in the water.
It's the difference between learning and doing.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like to learn? We all like to learn, right?
Sure.
Like, oh, this is interesting. This is satisfying my curiosity for how it actually happens. And then he's like, okay, now it's time to go. And within 2 sessions of coaching, he's like, you're going up. And I'm like, oh, well, no, we're not ready. He's like, yeah, nobody's ready.
Yeah, you can't ever be ready.
And this side of it, now performing at the coolest hot spots with some of the biggest names, I just look back and go, oh, gosh, now I know what he was talking about.
Right.
But at the time, and here's actually the interesting, here's the biggest fear for me. So I hired him as a coach, and it wasn't like super expensive, like 10 sessions for $1,000. Okay. Right? So it's not like crazy. And he wanted to understand my persona, who I was. Now he went and Googled me and saw that I had done Amplify Live Experience. He'd seen me on stage. He'd seen that I was connected with Gary Vee. So he's like, wow, you're already really established in what you do, and there's 5 key components to being good at comedy. He goes, you already have 4: stage presence, confidence, being able to read the room, quick on your feet.
All things that would apply to public presenting, essentially.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Which I not perfected, but had become a really good at over the last 23 years.
Even from the time that we met, which was sometime last year.
Yeah.
You presented at this opening for American Dream U, and I realized right off the bat, I'm like, oh, this guy's sharp. Like, this isn't he's standing up and saying a few words and he's awkward. Like, you've obviously been presenting in the past.
For like thousands of times.
Right.
So he goes, the 5th thing is just actually writing jokes and then going and performing them. And so he's like, here's what I want you to do. Go watch a bunch of comedians as soon as they walk on stage. I want you to see their first 30 seconds. I'm like, okay. And he goes, and then next time, he goes, I want you to write 5 minutes of what you think is funny. Gave me some like ideas about what I could write about. We would meet in a Starbucks at the handicap table. And he's like, I want you to walk in. Don't greet me as Wheels, but just pretend like I'm your audience.
Really? That's awkward.
I was so awkward. That morning I texted him. We were going to meet around 2 o'clock. That morning I texted him and go, this is dumb. I'm not doing it. And his response back to me via text was very simple. Are you the coach? And I'm like, no, I'll see it too. I go and bitch to my wife. I go, how stupid is this?
Yeah, sure.
She responds. She goes, are you the coach? I didn't even know his response.
That's classic.
She goes, you are a coach.
Our women, man, our wives are
they're
awesome
the best, right?
Yeah.
She's like, are you the coach? Like, she goes, you paid a bunch of money to learn from this guy. Why don't you just do what he says? So I'm like, all right. Then I started writing the bits out. I'm like, okay, I know what I'm going to say. I don't know if it's going to be funny, but at least I had a plank to walk on.
Sure. Enough to hang yourself with, right?
Exactly. I've never been more nervous in my life. There's not one time I've been more nervous. I walk in, I sit down, and I start to deliver. I'm about 2.5 minutes, and he goes, you can stop. I'm like, all right. He goes, you're not funny, but you have funny in you, and I'm confident I can pull it out.
What session was this?
2 or 3.
Oh, so this is the very beginning of it.
Yeah, because his whole thing is, and because he knows as a stand-up comedian now, is you only get funny by writing it, trying it in front of an audience.
Which is a little counterintuitive because you think, I think anyways, and I think most people listening who aren't quote-unquote funny, and I've never been called funny in my life, I don't think.
But you are a funny, witty guy.
I can be, right? But I think we somehow believe that those who are comedians are inherently funny. It just comes like they're the class clown,
right?
And we just believe that that's just their personality, and it is what it is.
But it's actually really quite the opposite, man. Which is interesting. So here's why I was so scared, because I processed why was I so scared. Like, I'm just talking, trying to say, is this funny? No, not funny. It's funny. Like, who cares? Here is what I needed, and this will resonate, I think, with a lot of the listeners. And I wanted to be a stand-up comedian.
It was you wanted it really bad,
really bad. And I'm like, I've done all this time on stage. I've seen all these comedians, and I'm like, I can do that, which I think is the birth of what anybody, like, I'm sure with podcasting.
It's hope, man.
It's hope, and you see it, and you go, I can do that.
Right.
And then that's what usually starts the journey, right?
Sure.
So I was so afraid that this guy would squash my dream of being a stand-up comedian one day. Because he's in the know, right?
Right, he knows. If anybody knows, he knows.
He knows. And if he would have told me, you don't have it, this will never work, forget it, I actually wonder where I'd be.
Has he told people that, though?
I don't know.
I'm curious.
I don't know.
I'm curious if there's people where he's like, no, this guy doesn't have it.
Yeah, I don't know. Because the truth of the matter is anybody can get to a degree of funny.
Sure.
I've realized now it's a skill like any other.
Of course.
But dude, when he said you're not funny, my heart sunk, and he goes, but you have funny in you, and I can bring it out. My heart soared again, and I was like, okay,
let's do this.
All right, I'm willing to put in the work. So he goes, perfect. You're going up in 2 nights. There's that was a Tuesday, I believe, and then the Thursday there was this really cool open mic, and he goes, you're going up in 2 nights at Vin DiCarlo's. It's on the Strip. He goes, there's going to be about 40 to 60 people there, which I was actually more excited that there was going to be more people there than less people, because it's actually a lot harder to make 8 people laugh than it is 80.
Because really, I imagine if you can get one or a handful of people to laugh, then it's kind of like that social proof that it's acceptable to laugh or that we should be laughing.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like, oh, this is my cue to laugh.
Exactly.
Rather than the one guy who's the professional and you're trying to win him over.
Dude, it's so tough.
So do you think the added pressure of you saying that this guy could literally lift me up or squash my dreams is what made that so nerve-wracking for you
100%.
when you went into that Starbucks or whatever?
Yeah, which was only what I built in my brain. It wasn't even true. I had all that fear and tension. I placed all that pressure on this guy, thinking he was the gatekeeper for my dream or not, which is none of that's true. But I had built it all up in my brain that was. Now, thank God he said, Keith, I think you're funny.
Yeah.
And then I went up.
What if he said you weren't funny or you couldn't be funny? Would you have stopped?
I probably, being that I didn't know anything about the industry, like the real industry, I would have probably thought, well, I mean, he knows. I mean, he's the top of the game.
Right.
He's the guy who discovered Sebastian Maniscalco.
I don't know who that is.
Was the top 8th grossing comedian this year, made $17 million.
Really?
Yeah, he's one of the hottest comedians in the world right now.
Okay, I should know who he is.
Yeah. So, you got Seinfeld, Chappelle, Rock, Hart, Gabriel Iglesias.
You got all these.
He makes way more than Rogan when
Is
it
that
comes
right?
to comedy.
Yeah, sure.
So you got those other 5 or 6 that are absolute household names, and then you got Sebastian Maniscalco.
So he's right on that verge of
dude
household name.
Fills out arenas. I mean, he's the one that pulled Sebastian aside as a young comedian and said, I think you have what it takes. I'm going to have you showcase. Because the comedy world is, to be able to get past at a club, you have to showcase for the owner or for the booker, and they have to say, yeah, you can actually perform at our club or not, or else
and
you're
the
not
booker
welcome.
is hired by the owner of the club?
Yeah, it'd be like say the manager of the club.
Okay,
yeah,
right.
Saying, hey, who do you think? Like, Kevin Hart, he went up to the comic strip, and there's a guy by the name, I can't remember his name, it was like Valation or something like that. And they looked at Kevin Hart and said, you don't have it. And Kevin's like, to my face? He's like, you said that to my face? I don't have it? He goes, I just killed. And he goes, yeah, you don't have it. And they wouldn't let him up.
Really?
So, I mean, it's a very tough like that.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I knew this guy had because I started Googling him, and I knew this guy had clout. He goes, okay, you're going up in 2 days. I'm like, all right. So I worked my craft. I worked my bits out that I thought it was 5 minutes. It was like the 5 stupid things my dad told me growing up. You know what I mean? I don't even remember what the bits
How long of a set are we looking at here?
5 minutes.
Oh, that's all it is. Okay.
You get 5 minutes.
All right. So you got to get on it.
Yeah, you got to get on it.
Right.
And which, being a seminar guy who does a seminar for 4 days,
right.
I know I can be funny in 4 days. I got time to build a little rapport. But 5 minutes, here's what happened. My wife goes with me. Wheels is sick, but he goes, I'm showing up. This is your first
That's
time.
your coach?
My coach was Wheels.
Okay.
And he was sick, but he goes, I'm showing up because this is your first time. I'm going to be here for you. I'm like, okay. We get there. I'm at the back table with my coach and my wife, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, this is stupid. I'm not doing it. And I look to them, and I'm like, but they showed up for me. Like, they don't have to. This guy's sick.
Right.
My wife's just supporting me because she knows this has been a dream of mine for a while. And I'm like, I can't let them down. I've got to go try this, and I don't care if I look stupid or not. I'm going to go do it. But I'm actually really doing it for them right now because I would have pushed out, interestingly enough.
Did you tell him that you weren't doing it? Or
no.
You just looked at him and like,
this is stupid. Here's why. Because public speaking looks a lot like stand-up comedy. I'm a sprinter in the public speaking world. I'm not even crawling yet in the stand-up world at this very beginning. I'm like the baby on the ground rolling around. They look like the same thing, but when you go up and watch me do my very first set, you're like, ooh,
awkward.
God, has this guy ever got in front of people before?
Not knowing. Such a different thing.
But to the casual viewer, you're just like, oh, you're on stage talking.
Right. I think the casual viewer expects to be entertained. That's why they're there, right? So if you're not entertaining them, it's like, well, what the hell's wrong with this guy?
Exactly. Hey, man, I bought my beer and my wings.
Right.
Like, make me laugh, Dick. Like, let's go.
Right.
And so the funniest thing is, but it looks the same because you're like, he's on stage speaking. And you're like, but you're such a good public speaker. I go, yeah, because I'm teaching you something you want to know. You paid money to be here to learn this. These guys just said, make me laugh. I don't care what you open for Tony Robbins in front of 7,000 people. Don't care. Make me laugh.
Right. Well, I think that's definitely a harder sale, man, to make somebody laugh versus to educate them on something.
It's totally involuntary. Laughter is involuntary.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yep.
Yes,
And there's triggers for it.
Yeah, that you're not going to fabricate that, right?
It's very
I mean, you
hard
might,
to.
but
It's very hard. It's very hard to get somebody to laugh if it's not funny. And what's funny, what's not funny is very interesting. And that's so as a stand-up comedian, you're trying stuff every single night. My 4-year-old daughter just said something to me. She goes, "Dad, you know who my favorite supervillain is?" I go, "Who's that?" She goes, "The Joker." I'm like, "Why?" She goes, "I love his red lipstick." I go, "That's funny." And then I go, "That's great." She goes, "You know who my favorite superhero is?" I go, "Who?" She goes, "Wonder Woman." She goes, "I want to sleep with her every night." Now she's thinking stuffed animal.
Sure, yeah.
But I go, "Yeah, so does every man in America." Right? She just told me that yesterday.
Right.
And I'm like, I need to try that. I tried it last night. But you use bits that you know work well, and then you try new stuff to see that, is this going to work or not?
You're almost in a way, I'm sorry to interject here, but it almost sounds like you're hedging your bet a little bit because you're doing stuff that's proven to work, and you're like, okay, I'm in good right now.
Yep.
Like, let me throw something in and see where it goes. Right. And if it flops, I'll just go back to the good stuff.
That's exactly right. But that's the only way you grow. So Jay Leno said, if you're not trying a new joke or two every set, you're wasting your time. I know, because like last night I did 10 or 12 minutes. And I know I have a 5-minute set that will crush. Absolutely. I've done it 100 times, and I know it's going to get everybody to laugh just about.
Right.
Then I try some new stuff that I go, I think it's funny. Let's see. So then you try it, and it worked. Like you just giggled,
sure.
and it
funny.
worked. The next piece on top of that, I go, have you ever noticed that superheroes don't discover their superpower till later on in life? That's probably a good thing. Could you imagine if they discovered it as a kid? Spider-Man's mom's like, Peter, you're not going over to Tommy's house. He's like, oh yeah? Psh, who's grounded now? That didn't get that much of a laugh. I'm like, I need to retweak that. Yeah.
How do you know whether you should tweak it or scrap it?
No laughs or laughs.
So if they get little what I'm saying is take that punchline there. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you tweak and you change, maybe the timing or the delivery?
Yeah.
Or is that something you're like, no, gone, mix it?
So last night was one of the hardest crowds I've ever performed for. It was 25, 50, and 60-year-olds. And all my good material hit really hard. And so I'm like, well, let me try this and then you know how to, eventually you learn how to judge a room. So there's a room I do every Wednesday night, and it can be anywhere from 8 people to 80. Wow. And I actually like it when it's 8 because I'll try new stuff. And if I can get that 8 people to laugh, I go, I know for a fact 80. I can get a good room to laugh at this. So, you and I were talking a little off air about, the guts and the ability to try stuff. Every single set, I'm trying something new, baked in with something I already know is working. Because if I can try it and it works, now I build my minutes up. And, if I say, hey, man, I've got 25 minutes of killer material that I know I can go up with, any comedian will be like, oh, then how long has that taken you? Probably about 8 to 10 months to build that. And you're like, yeah.
He knows.
Yeah, because
he knows what it takes.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
I got a solid minute that I know I'm going to get at least 4 to 5 laughs out of that minute.
When do you mix things up? So let's say you get to that 25-minute mark of solid material. That's not going to be evergreen stuff, right? I mean, you're going to be constantly changing that, tweaking that, adjusting that.
Yeah.
Or is it evergreen?
Yeah, you use it. Like Bill Burr said this. He goes, because he'll know when it's time for him to do a special. Do you know who Bill Burr is?
I do, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'm familiar with him.
Yeah, another master.
Sure.
I think he's the best comedian walk on planet Earth right now. Super funny. But he goes, I get to the point where I'm so tired of this material, I can't wait to shoot a special and not do it again. And I've done my 10 or 15 minutes, probably 75 or 100 sets. And I'm to the point now where I'm like, I'm going to do it, and I put all my enthusiasm because they've heard it for the first time.
Sure.
But this is
new to them.
This is my 100th time doing it. But the interesting thing is whenever you're trying something new, I'll give it 5 or 10 times, similarly the same way, and I record every set. That's the other thing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's practice, and then it's going back and playing it back and be like, oh, dude, I stumbled over that word. That's why I didn't laugh. Or I do this thing. I go, how many of you here clap it up? Or how many of you here are married? Clap it up. And I have to wait for all the claps to stop, and I go, cool. Then you know what I'm going through. But last night, I let them clap, and the clap went really long, and I go, cool, you know what I'm going through, but the clap hadn't died down yet, so they didn't actually hear the punch, so it didn't land.
Oh, yeah.
So we're talking half a second delay can change the entire punchline. It's so nuanced that people are but That's what makes it so dang hard.
Right.
Do you know James Altucher?
I know of him. I don't know him personally.
He has a larger podcast. He's
Sure.
dove in deep into the
He
comedy
has.
game.
Yeah, he has.
He's part owner of Stand Up New York. But we were talking back and forth online yesterday, and he's like, congratulations on diving into the hardest thing to master on earth.
Which is comedy. Stand-up comedy.
Yeah, which I believe that, but I got to wonder what neurosurgeon is listening to that and being like, is it? I'm making sure somebody doesn't actually, well,
I think
stop thinking.
I think what you're referring to is the stakes, right?
Yeah.
The stakes of you not making somebody laugh is minuscule compared to a brain surgeon, having a mini seizure or
exactly.
a heart attack during the middle of a procedure and killing somebody. But that doesn't mean that it's harder or maybe it's just different.
So there's so many things that I learned from stand-up comedy was A, the guts to try something new. Mm-hmm. B, I started this at 38 years old, which, there's guys that have been doing it since 18. They've already got 20 years in the game. They've refined themselves. So the reinvention piece, it was easy to go. It was easy to go because my wife and my coach were there. But guess what? The other 50 open mics were. I was there by myself.
Yeah.
Late at night in front of 4 people at a bar, and nobody cared about what I was doing. I was to get yourself to, especially because here's the thing I think I was trying to mention earlier that I spaced out on is when you're a master at something, it really is hard on the ego to go really suck hard at something. And I'm sure you probably experienced that with the bow. I mean, the corollaries between you bow hunting and what you're doing, you actually have an immediate response. Boom, I didn't hit the target. Well, what happened?
Instant feedback.
Well, did I do it right? Like,
Sure.
There's all that. So it's that instant feedback. It's the ego. It's why do I want these people to like me so much? So you're dealing with all of that.
How do you overcome that? Because ultimately, I think it'd be very easy to equate with if I can make these people laugh, they're going to like me. I'm going to have more influence or credibility in their eyes. Mm-hmm. And so it seems like there is a direct correlation. Mm-hmm. And yet I imagine you're trying to sever the correlation between making them laugh and them liking you.
Yeah, because you have to not care.
Right. Because you can't say what you need to say if you care about their feedback.
Yeah.
In a way. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. You're hitting it on all the right points. It's hard to articulate.
Yeah.
But like, what would drive this person to go do this other than the fact that when I've seen guys like Dane Cook growing up and I see these guys, I go, I can do it. I can do that. And having a whole entire crowd like doubled over laughing because of what you said.
Right.
The payoff is so huge.
What would you say is the payoff? Is the payoff just a sense of personal satisfaction, or is your payoff knowing that these people are smiling because of you? Like, what is it that actually feels good about standing up in front of people and making them laugh?
There's a couple things, and it's really multi-layered. Interestingly enough, life is tough. I mean, building a business is tough, but once you like get there and money's flowing in, it feels easy. But there's always challenges. People working a job, they hate their boss, they hate their coworkers. There's a lot of like tough stuff. So the fact that I can provide this moment of time where they're actually not thinking about any of that, and I'm doing some joke about sex with my wife in the morning as opposed to at night because I got a 4-year-old who's just ruined our night sex game. And what does that look like? And they're relating. And they're like, yeah, my husband tries to have sex with me every morning too, and you know what I mean? And they're just laughing, and they're almost forgetting everything. That brings a lot of joy to me. Secondly, the second layer is I know how hard it is to get them to laugh.
Yeah.
That the payoff is like all this work that none of you guys saw, and it's just for your cheap laugh and entertainment right now. That brings a lot of joy to my heart. Third layer is I want to be respected by other comedians. So I got paid the biggest compliment about a week ago. I performed with Kevin Nealon, but the way the lineup was set up was there was a headliner. His name is Ant. Been in the game for 25 years. I think he won Last Comic Standing. Phenomenal comedian. The booker, who's becoming a friend of mine, he put him, a couple of comedians, him, me.
Oh, so you had to follow this guy.
And then Kevin Nealon.
Wow.
And the booker said, I put you in the hardest spot possible because I've seen you crush on other stages because I want to see if you could handle this. And at the when I got done, Kevin Nealon was like, very funny, man.
Really?
Great stuff. I'm like, thanks, Kevin. He went up and did his set, came back down kind of in the green room area, and he goes, no, seriously, I want to tell you again. He goes, that was some really funny stuff up there. Unique. Well done, man. And it was a huge compliment to me.
Sure.
Then the booker's like, Keith, you got just as many laughs and as big a laugh as those guys did. He goes, that was a huge test for you. And he goes, and you passed with flying colors. He goes, great job.
That's awesome.
So I got the respect of the comedians.
Yeah.
And there's some of that because there's a lot of people like, oh, that guy's hacky, or oh, that's just a reiteration of somebody else's joke. And you don't want that to be said of you. You want them to be like, wow, man, the guy's put he's put some originality, he's put his flair on it. And so that's the layer of what's happening. All that's going on, which same in business, right? You're like, you want the masses to like what you have to offer, and they go, wow, this is great, I want to buy more. You want other entrepreneurs to be like, wow, that guy's bright, like he's innovative, he's thought of some things that he hasn't, and then you know how difficult it was to bring whatever it was to market and have people accept it. So the parallels are crazy similar.
Right.
Probably same with bow hunting.
Oh, yeah, bow hunting, or even just this podcast.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, you really dropped the ball on that one, or or you really did well on that one. And you're right. People don't see what goes behind the scenes, or they think, oh, you're just a natural. Anything but that. It is definitely not something that comes natural for me. And maybe even for yourself.
Well, I was on a podcast at the Comedy Store. They have a couple of podcasts that they produce, and they're like, "Man, you just have it. You have it up on that stage." And I go, "You should have seen me 10 years ago." They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, because they had watched some of my videos, and I did a promo video for American Dream U. We put on a thing for Nellis Air Force Base for the airmen, and I sent it out to a bunch of comedians to see if they wanted to come do it. And they're like, as soon as we saw that video, we're like, oh, this guy's legit. They're like, man, you're just natural on the camera. I said, it's not offensive, but I just want you to know it could be taken. I'm not offended, but I just want you to know if you would have seen my very first videos 10 years ago you would not have been like, oh, this guy's a natural.
Yeah.
I'm naturally talented because I've done it for 10 years.
Right.
And I've literally produced maybe 1,000 or 2,000 videos. That's why I'm a natural.
Yeah.
But people forget that.
Well, and it falls into the same camp as luck. You're so lucky. Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's not luck.
Yeah.
There is no luck. There's some fortunate events. I'm not going to deny that. You come
we're
into some
white
meetings,
males in America.
That's right. Exhibiting all sorts of toxic masculinity here. But it's just not luck. It's really frustrating when I hear people talk about that, because what they're doing, it's not that like you said, it's not that it's offensive to me.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is they're discounting their own lives. Like they're selling themselves short.
Yeah.
Because even if it's subconscious, what they're saying is that I don't have X, Y, and Z because I just haven't got quote unquote lucky yet.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the amount of work and effort and dedication and the ability, in your case, to overcome a very real fear of people judging you. Yeah. That's what you're asking people to do.
Yeah.
Like, you're getting up on stage and you're saying, hey, I want you to judge everything about me.
That's so
from the
true.
way that I look
Yeah.
to the tone of my voice to the way I deliver a joke to the way that my mind is working. Judge everything about me, and then you'll tell me if you like it based on if you laugh or not.
Exactly.
That's a tall order.
And you know what's so interesting about you saying that? Because it is all those components. As soon as you walk out on stage, people are like, okay, I don't like him, but let me see if I do.
Yeah.
Like, they're judging everything. Why does he have tattoos all over him? Do comics have tattoos? Who else has tattoos?
Sure.
Why does he have hair like that?
So I want to ask you about that, because I look at you and I wouldn't say like your physical appearance is extreme, but I would say it's unique.
Interesting.
Right? Like your hair's unique. Like it's unique, and I'm
for
wondering
a comedian or just for life?
Just in general.
Oh,
I
okay.
think if you were walking down the street, I think somebody would see you and say, "Oh, that guy's interesting. Like there's something unique about that." But I was going to ask if it's intentional, but it sounds like maybe it isn't. Just based on your response.
I just go, oh, I like that. That's a good look.
I'm just thinking, like, you can't be a boring guy if you're trying to get up on stage and entertain people.
But see, that's the cool thing about comedy. Comedy's like music, man. Some people like you, some people don't. Like Sebastian Maniscalco, one of my favorite comedians. I was hanging out with a buddy of mine, Brad, the other day, and he's like, I watched his clips. I don't get it. And then when we watched them together yesterday, he goes, here, watch this clip. I'm howling laughing. I've seen that bit 14 times.
And you're still laughing.
No, like, just
sure
losing my shit. And he's like, I don't get it. I'm like, too bad for you. This is great.
You're missing out.
And he just goes, I don't get it. And then he'll put on one of his comedians I'm like, and I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And so so I don't know,
It's all
man.
subjective.
So there is boring people that are more deadpan, and they're like, yeah, but they have the way their funny comes across. You're like,
that's true. You have
so funny.
you have really dry, and I have friends who are like this. They're really dry, and they say things, and you just can't help but smile and laugh. That is true. I hadn't thought about that.
So because I'm such a student in the game, I've probably watched every Netflix special somebody's put out. So I know what a lot of the different comedians look like, and ultimately, it takes a long time to find your voice. The cool thing that I had coming into already having been so established in public speaking and speaking in front of people was I know who I am. So I do this. I just pretend like I've never tried gay. I said, you know what I mean? But I think the problem would be I think it would be the facial hair. I think that's what would really ruin it for me. If his beard was scratching the back of my neck, I'm like, I can't do this. And I'm just creating this nothing. And I go, so I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm waiting for a clean shaven fella. And I'll look to a guy and I go, sir. And anytime you do that interaction with the crowd, they think they're creating the moment with you, and they go nuts.
Oh, that yeah.
So
that connection is huge.
Sir, split the room wide open, and I go, I don't know, maybe you and me after, we try gay. And if they say yes, I go, you see how easy it is in the gay world? I could never get away with that in the straight world. I got to tell you, we're getting married. We're going to do 2.3 kids. But if he goes yes, I go, in the gay world, it's like, you want to be gay? You want to try gay? All right, off we skip. And then it gets a good laugh.
Yeah.
But if he says no, I go, well, apparently my gaydar's off. So that I know how to respond no matter what he says, that I'm going to create funny out of it. That's when you know a guy's got a real handle on the craft.
No, I hadn't even thought about that because I just thought, okay, we hear this. It's a bit, right?
Yep.
And so you just think, chug through it.
Yep.
And if it's funny, it's funny. And if it's not, you're like, oh, well, okay, keep going. But I like this idea. This makes sense. But
because you're creating with them.
Well, it's an interaction as opposed to a presentation.
Yep.
Right? Like presenting, and we've all been presented to or at, right?
Yep.
It's like, let me just get through my stuff. I don't care how you respond. I just got to get through it.
Yeah.
And we as an audience or listeners find that miserable.
Horrible.
Yeah. Well, so this is actually a really good segue because you're talking about gay, and what I knew I wanted to address with you today is this idea, and I don't even know fully how to articulate it, but I think societally we have given you unwritten permission to talk about taboo subjects that are quote unquote off limits to us civilian population.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that as far as like that we give you that permission to talk about things that the rest of us won't or can't?
Historically, yes.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's an interesting scene right now, and I'm really glad that comedians are pushing back and saying, hey, no, we are a free speech country, and comedians have always given commentary on the world from our perspective.
Right.
And so I do a joke about black women. And I
can't even imagine. Yeah.
So I go, man, I notice there's not a whole lot of black women in the crowd. And that's my opening line. And I go, oh, you guys are on the edge of your seats now, aren't you? Because any of you mentioned race or anything. And I go, I'm actually really attracted to black women. I've never had sex with a black woman before. And I've had an opportunity, but the reason I didn't do it was because I was scared. Not because I didn't feel like I measured up, but I had heard my whole life, once you go black, you never go back. And I didn't think my wife would appreciate that. And that's the punch.
Right.
And then I make fun of the fact that I go, and a lady came up to me one day and says, I don't think you should joke about adultery. And I go, well, it's actually not a joke about adultery. It's actually a race joke tucked into a dick joke, masquerading as an adultery joke. Learn the difference. And then I go, and then a guy came and said, are you racist?
I'm sure.
And I'm like, that's the most racist accent I've ever heard, right? And I go, I'm not racist. If I was, I'm racist against white people. And I'll tell you why. Black people are better at everything. Sports, dancing, and they write the best love-making music. I said, but what I don't understand is how can you dominate everything like that? But every black guy I know has the patchiest beard ever. How can you have such weak beard game? And so and they're like, hold on, what about James Harden? He's got a great guy.
Yeah.
I go, well, he's a 25% Arab. He's 25% Arab. So there's always an exception, and everybody knows that Arabs have the best facial game on planet Earth.
True.
How do you finesse this thing?
Dude, that's it's just dangerous waters.
Yeah, but if you can finesse it
not very
right.
many people are even willing to get into the water.
And I've had a couple coaches.
I'm not willing to get into the water.
Yeah, a couple of my coaches are like, hey, stay away from the race stuff. I go, absolutely not. I find it funny, and I grew up, some of my best friends are black people. So I'm like the least racist guy you'll ever meet. And I have homosexual friends. I have black friends. I don't even. But I'm like, but let's just talk about it and let's see what happens. Like Joe Rogan, and I learned this from him, and he does a joke about Noah's Ark. Have you ever heard his Noah Ark joke?
No, I haven't heard it.
He goes, I wanted to create a joke about how funny this story is, where even Christians and religious people could get on my side.
Mm-hmm.
So he did it from the perspective of an 8-year-old retarded kid.
Mm.
And he goes, so wait a second, you're telling me that there's a big boat and all the animals, there seems like there's some holes in that story. And so he presented it as an 8-year-old retarded kid, not being able to grasp it. And he goes, it took me a year to find it. I botched the bit, but it took him a year.
Yeah, because it doesn't sound funny when you say it.
No, exactly. But if you hear the whole entire bit,
right,
he's presenting it where everyone's like,
yeah,
you kind of got a point.
Yeah, great point.
I still believe it, but I like the perspective.
I just think it's funny that...
Well done, sir.
Yeah, well, and that is a crap, but I just think it's funny that, well, people just love to be offended.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they want to be offended. It's like the race to see who can be the most outraged, the most offended. You know, I'm LDS Mormon,
yeah.
And so... You know, a lot of people say, well, they mock it or ridicule or whatever. And I can choose to be offended about that or say, yeah, no, it sounds really weird, right? It's like, you don't have to take everything so personal.
Why do you think that is? I'm curious, from your perspective, because you deal and talk with a lot of guys, why are they racing to the offensive finish line?
I think it's easier. I think it's a form of victimhood mentality, right? Is like, if somebody's attacking me, then that gives me some sort of legitimacy to my inadequacy, right? Like if I'm not performing, but it's because somebody else is doing or saying something about me and hindering my potential growth, then I don't have to own it, right? I don't have to own that I'm not making the kind of money I want, or I don't have the body, or I don't have the relationship, or whatever it is that I say I'm after.
Wow.
If somebody has done it to me,
that's good.
It's laziness.
You know, that lines up so much with the concept I've been like hot on lately, and that is, the temptation is for us to fight for our excuses more than fight for the results.
100%. It's easier.
It's
the path of
easier.
least resistance.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you said that. That's, you know, I want to catch myself if I get offended next time. I don't remember the last time I was offended, but I'm sure we all struggle. I'm sure we're all tempted to go that direction.
Right.
Maybe it's...
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's a natural tendency.
Like, the only reason that guy's ahead and I'm not there is because it's like, well, hold on. You're fighting for your excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than just be like, hey, congratulations on that guy. Good. And like I said with that comedian back in the gym 2 years before I started, I was like, well, if you can do it, that means I can do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's this really strange thing, too, that everybody is taking things so literally. Like I made a post on Instagram the other day about one of my favorite quotes is by John Eldredge. He's the author of Wild at Heart.
Oh, I love that book.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of my favorite books on the subject of masculinity. And he says, deep in his heart, every man longs for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. I'll give you one guess where people got hung up on that thing. A beauty to rescue. Like some women don't want to be rescued. And I'm like, dude, I'm not legitimately talking about saving the damsel in distress. And neither is John Eldredge.
Yeah.
That's not what he's talking about. People need to learn and understand context.
Yeah.
They need the ability to discern what this individual actually means, the story and the environment around the message that's being delivered, and stop taking things so literally that you can't actually see what's being told or taught or a joke that's being shared, and just laugh because it's funny.
Yeah.
When somebody mocks, for example, my religion, because we talked about that earlier, I think it's funny.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
It doesn't impact me when somebody doesn't agree with me. I think it's funny. I'm like, yeah, that is weird. That does seem weird from the outside looking in. People just have a hard time with it, man.
I open every one of my sets with what would a Mormon strip club look like.
I was going to say, man, do you have any Mormon jokes?
Absolutely. So,
well, okay,
usually
sorry,
when
I interrupted you.
No. Let me say something about what you just said that I thought was really important. The people who are least offended, I think, actually have something they're actually doing with their life. Have you noticed that the most offended, they're like, hey man, go live your life. Quit watching Kardashians. Like, go be a Kardashian.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, you know what I mean, but go live a life. Like, go be in the arena. You probably love that quote from Theodore Roosevelt, right?
Teddy Roosevelt, yeah.
Yeah, don't be the guy that's just watching, but be with the blood and the sweat and the tears. So I think if they were busy doing their quest, if they were on their adventure, if they were winning their battle, if they were, of course we want to win the heart of a woman. That's the greatest. Man, when my wife looks into my eyes, and I know there's love in her eyes for me, and she's like, I love my man. Like, that's a great feeling. When my daughter looks up at me like, you're the best dad on the face. I might not be, but to her I am.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So, I notice that people bring me, like when they go, all right, next comedian, bring him up for Keith Yackey. It sounds like a strip club DJ to me.
Yeah, a little bit.
So I go, is it me or did Martin just sound like a strip club DJ? All right, get your 5, 10s, 20 ready. Here comes Keith, the center stage. And my opening, I do that every time because it gets them to go, oh, he's funny.
Like loosens them up a little bit, right?
And I go, I was in Salt Lake about a month ago, and the DJ brought me up the same way, real strip clubby. And I go, wait, hold on a second. Do you guys even have strip clubs up here in Utah? Like, how does it work? To start with a prairie dress and then work her way down to the Mormon underwear? Is there a VIP room in the back where she'll straddle you and then whisper scripture in your ear? I'm like, do they pay tithe on their tips? Like $9 for me, 1 for the Lord. Like, what's the security detail? Just a couple dudes on 10 speeds hanging around the outside? And then lastly, the guy working the door, does he have like a short sleeve button-down shirt with a big black plastic badge that says Elder Bouncer? Like, how's that work? And so they immediately, and dude, I've told that in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
And they love it.
It's funny.
Yeah.
It's fun, and it's true.
Yeah, and then I tag on the Utah thing, and I go, man, I used to feel like polygamy, like that would be cool until I saw how it actually worked. It's not like one dude's marrying 5 gorgeous women. It's like one dude marrying 5 gals that are like, eh. I go, well, I figure he just must figure 5 2s equal a 10. You know what I mean? So I played off of that culture because we all have a stereotype of what we think of the LDS.
Sure.
And it's, from TV and society or whatever, multiple women, you know what I mean, underwear, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I have a ton of Mormon friends. I think they're great people, man. They have a religion. You guys believe what you believe. It's what you believe. Like, cool.
But again, I mean, that just comes back to the fact that you have an amazing opportunity as a comedian to say things that other people are too afraid to say, or it's socially taboo to say. And the reality is that we need to have those conversations.
Yeah.
If all we're talking about is, the ball game and the weather and the this and the that, it's like, are we really having these deep and meaningful conversations that literally have the potential to change the world? It's like Kevin Hart. I mean, he's been under some fire lately for a gay joke I think he told, 12 years ago?
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, if everybody was telling gay jokes, nobody would be concerned about who's gay and who isn't.
Yeah.
It's because we're not talking about it that everybody's like, oh, whoa, gay people, straight people, this, that. It's like, just talk about it. It's okay.
That's why I love the work you're doing, man, because, you're passionate about it. It's fun to see people that are passionate about their thing. And, even if people are passionate about stuff that you and I maybe disagree with or we're not that into, I love seeing people that are passionately pursuing this path that's important to them. You know what I mean? Because that's the country we live in. It's free. Like, I love that. So I love the work that you're doing.
I appreciate it.
It's
man.
really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
it. So what's next on the docket for you? I mean, you're doing the Comedy Store. I think a lot of people are probably familiar with that.
A lot of people probably listen to Rogan's podcast. And
I'm
probably
sure
hear
that's
him
where
talking about it every other day.
Yeah.
I saw him when I was there just last week.
Did you perform with him that same night?
Yeah, same night.
It's like split up into rooms
There's
or something,
3 different
right?
rooms.
Because
Yeah.
I've been there once.
Okay.
And actually watched Rogan perform.
Oh, nice.
And
was it the main room, the big one with the red stage?
The red stage.
So that's the main room.
There's another guy. Who's the guy? I think his name is Chris.
Dalia.
Yes.
Yeah.
That guy is funny.
He's a killer, man.
He's a killer, and he's almost a little psychotic, like the way that he presents, and you're like, whoa, what's wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
And then he just gets funnier and funnier and funnier. That guy cracks me up.
Dude, the Comedy Store has the best of the best comedians perform there. That's why it's such an honor to be able to perform there. They have 3 different rooms. One holds about 350 people. That's the main stage.
And I think that's where we were.
Yeah. We were supposed to do that one, and then they brought in Rogan, and he can fill that place in a
So he's
hot
like,
minute.
nah, bumping you guys.
So they pushed us over to the original room, which is actually the very first room that they had.
And then what, they built on top of that or expanded from there?
It's just there's just different rooms. So there's a main room that's the main room was actually the last room to become a part of. Actually, that's not entirely true, but it's kind of true. But regardless, the original room holds 140 people. The belly room holds about 100. And then you've got the main room that holds about, I think, 350 or 380. I mean, those numbers might be a little bit off. But the original room is where they have 16 headliners every single night. guys that literally legitimately fill their own places when they go out on the road every single weekend.
Right.
So you can hear killer after killer after killer after killer. So we performed there. He was in the main room. But there's a hallway that connects them all that the comedians hang out in. And Rogan walked by. And, dude, it was like looking into the eyes of the most alpha silverback in the world.
Why? What? Like, tell me about that.
And it actually took me. I mean, I love Rogan. I love his podcast. I don't know. Did you know that he wrote a bit about my band's songs?
No.
I'll tell you about that in a second.
Okay, yeah.
Which is really funny. So, I think he's probably one of the most influential Americans right now, if not people on the earth. I mean, I don't know. I heard he's getting like 115 million downloads a month.
Yeah, he's almost caught up to us now.
Yeah, so he's pretty close to you guys.
Right.
And so he's got so much influence. And when he says, I'm going to be somewhere, whether it's the Ice House or the Comedy Store or whatever, the place sells within an hour or two. I mean, that's how many people follow him and love his work. So he's walking down the hall. I'm talking with the photographer. There's only one or two photographers that actually can take shots in there, and you're not allowed to use your camera. So I hired the guy in there because I wanted to get good shots.
Sure.
And I said, hey, can I hire you? He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So we became buddies. We hired him, and he did some beautiful work for us. I was talking with him in the hall, and Rogan walked by and stopped to talk with him. He turned, said hello to me. We looked each other in the eye, and it was like I know how much influence that dude has, and so it was weird to like literally be even closer than you and I are. And then he walked about. He went into the kitchen. I walked to do something. I walked back, and I walked right past him. And then he looked me up and down, maybe because I looked unique, like you say. And it was just kind of like a nod, like, "Hey, how's it going?" It
like
was,
an acknowledgement, almost.
Yeah, not that he knows me or anything.
No, I know,
but just like, "Hey, yeah,
right."
And it was just that feeling, like, dude, this is probably one of the most influential people in our society right now, and we just. Like, I don't know, we look into, like, you know, we're gazing in each other's eyes right now, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's getting pretty hot in here. So it's everybody hears him or sees him on YouTube. Fewer people interact with him even for a split second.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting. The funny thing is I had met him before. I stayed after one of his shows, and he walked down. I said, hey, man, I just want to say hi. I had no idea that you made love to your wife listening to my music. He's like, what are you talking about? Well, he did a bit. I have my band is the Imperial Stars.
Okay.
We shut down the freeway back in 2010 and played music on top of it, and went to jail for like 28 hours.
Really?
Yeah, hashtag
That's
Thug
awesome.
Life. And he did a bit about it. He goes, have you ever heard those songs that have the worst lyrics possible? He goes, did you hear about this band called the Imperial Stars? He goes, here's the lyrics. I'm a rock star baby living on the edge, known for hanging out and partying with my friends. He goes, some idiot was like, we're done. That's good. Run it. So he's making fun of the song, right?
Right.
And I wrote the song with my buddy Chris.
Yeah.
And it's a catchy tune. And he goes, that night I'm making love to Mrs. Rogan from behind. And he goes, I start singing in my head, I'm a rock star, baby, living. He's like, no, this song is in my head. So when I met him after a show, and he's like at first he's kind of like, what are you talking about, idiot?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I came,
it's a little like,
yeah,
whoa.
But I knew it would stop him because he was with his entourage moving.
Right.
And he goes, what band? I go, the Imperial Stars. You know, I'm a rock star. He goes, oh, like, there's actually a real human being that wrote that stupid song. Shook my hand. We got a picture with him. It was super cool. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
He won't, like, but I know he didn't walk in the Comedy Store and be like, oh, you're that guy.
Right.
I'll get to know him one day because I'm going to
Sure.
continue to perform there a lot, and it will be cool, whatever. But eventually I'll tell him. But it's just so funny. Like, there's only two people on the planet Earth that can say that bit was about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chris and me.
That's true.
So it's kind of funny.
That is funny.
But I just knew how much influence he had. It was kind of like if the president walked by. Except there's no Secret Service. There's no nothing. You're just in this back hallway with comedians and Joe Rogan.
Right.
So
Pretty intimate.
very intimate.
Have you ever told a joke that, well, you talk about Mrs. Rogan, for example. Have you ever told a joke that she's like, don't ever tell that joke again?
About my wife?
Yeah.
No.
Like, what is it? Is it acceptable in the community, within comedians, that like it's okay to talk about personal relationships?
Yeah.
Or is there like limits where you and your wife are like, no, you're not doing that. You're not talking about that.
Well, it's usually raising them up and talking about what knuckle draggers we are.
Sure.
So the new bit that I tried out at the Comedy Store, I wrote the night before with my wife. My wife will help me write my stuff. She's like, well, why don't you try this? Or what about this angle? And so after I do this really funny bit about it's a little crude, so I don't want to get crude on here, but it's the bit that gets the biggest laugh almost every set.
Yeah.
And it has some audience participation, and it's just every single time I do it, I go, this will split the room, like make them laugh.
Sure.
And but you're always trying to build deeper on the bits, and anything you can talk about your family, your kids, your wife, whatever. You never run the risk of copying anybody because you're just telling about what happened to you,
your
right?
Life.
And that's a big thing. Plagiarism in comedy, like you will instantly get kicked out of the community if they like you stole that bit from this person.
Just blacklisted, essentially.
They're just like, dude, you're a fake. Get the hell out of here. And I don't ever want that. So I mean, we're always. I'll even run by like, have you ever heard this? Or, I'll try something out, and some of my comedian friends are like, no, I never heard that concept before. I'm like, okay, cool, I'll stick with that.
Right.
So, at any rate, I knew this bit would work. And it's because my wife and I were doing it the night before, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be so funny. So I go, my wife and I have been together for 7 years. We're super comfortable with each other. Not like, take a shit in front of each other with the door open comfortable, but we're comfortable. I said, but I knew she was really comfortable with, rather than just talking to me, she would start rapping lyrics or singing stuff to me. So one morning I'm making breakfast, she walks in, I go, hey, good morning, babe. And she goes, first off, fuck your bitch and the clique you claim. And I go, Tupac? You can't say that. Like, in all technicality, like, you are my bitch. And we are each other's clique, right? And then she goes, oh, sorry, but girls just want to have fun. And I'm like, what is your problem? And she goes, well, I got 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. And I'm like, so I knew my wife was crazy, but apparently she's also lesbian. And I go, which I should have known because I saw her making out with her best friend Becky right in front of me just a week ago. Which I didn't hate, but I felt left out. So that's the bit,
right?
And I knew it had enough punches that it would be funny. And my wife's not even lesbian at all, but it's just this thing that we grew. But she was the one who helped me craft it because I was listening to a lot of Tupac, and she just came up to me out of the blue, sat next to me. She's like, "Fuck you, bitch, and the clique you claim," and I'm like, what? I'm like, that's really funny.
Yeah. And
it crushed so hard because a lot of the women in there love Tupac. At that age.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So,
well, because you were telling me you told, I'm assuming it's the same bit, just the other night, to a group of 50 to 60-year-olds, and it was, you didn't get anything.
It was like,
yeah,
they're like, who's Tupac? You know what I mean?
Right.
But the interesting thing, so in that regard, I'm making my wife look a little crazy, but also she looks fun.
Right, you're having fun with her.
Yeah, and so they're like, oh, these guys have a really fun, playful relationship. So that's this situation, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's always like, I show how crazy I am, but then sometimes I show how crazy she is, but it's never like my wife's just a horrible human being. Some comedians go there and maybe their wives are a horrible human being. And it's the believability and the truth. Like if I had a horrible wife and I talked about what a horrible wife it was and it was really believable, there's people in an audience that have horrible wives.
Well, I think it has to be relatable. Like if the joke, well, it's the old adage, it's funny because it's true. Mm-hmm. If there isn't some level of truth to it, then I don't know why I remember this joke, but I remember listening to Seinfeld or something, and he was talking about being in the hotel and seeing this like little hair, this little like pube on the shower, and rather than like touch it, you're like splashing water on the wall, like trying to get the pube to go down off the wall and into the drain so you don't have to look at it anymore. Yep. And I'm like, that's funny because I have literally done that where I'm like, oh, there's like a pube right in my face. Like, so I think it has to be, it can't be fabricated from my perspective.
Yeah, they can tell.
Oh,
it can be a little bit exaggerated, and you can like blend stuff together to make it seem like that would be the case. And then, dude, sometimes you cross the line. You're like, oh, well, I crossed the line, and they weren't that into that.
So when you say cross the line, what you're saying is that the audience decides what the line is?
It didn't work. And I knew it was kind of risky. I have a joke that I continue on with the superhero when I go with my daughter. I go,
right.
She says the funniest things, man. One day she goes, Daddy, when I grow up, I want to marry you. I looked at my wife and we laughed. We're like, oh, that's cute. Meanwhile, in Arkansas, there's a little girl that told her daddy she wanted to marry him. And he's like, get the invitations ready. Call the wedding coordinator. It's going down.
And people didn't like that one?
It was kind of like, oh.
That's
you know what I mean?
little too much.
They're like, we know that's true, but we actually don't want to celebrate that with you.
Right.
So I thought it was funny. And so that's, as a comedian, you're trying, like, I think this is hilarious.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you cross the line and you're just like, maybe, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't try that.
Yeah.
Or I need to try it a few more times and make it not so. That one hit
not so
too
brash.
Yeah, that one was like a sledgehammer to the head. I would have liked maybe a mallet to the arm.
It's like Jocko talks about. He's like, you got to flank them, right?
Yeah,
like if you come head on, it's like whoa. But if you flank it, same joke, you just flank it, tell it a little different. It's like, oh, okay, that's acceptable.
Yeah,
it's okay to say it that way.
That's the rush about business or comedy. It's like, I think this is funny. I think this will work. Man, I've had a ton of campaigns that I've tried running with my business. I'm like, this is going to crush. And it's like, I didn't. It's like, oh, that was weird.
Let me ask you this, because, a lot of guys listening to this, they're not going to pursue a career in stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
But the reason that I wanted to have this conversation is because I do believe that there's value in being funny. Mm-hmm. I think I have a pretty good idea of what some of those are, but I'd like to hear from you, like, what can somebody incorporate into their life who maybe not looking to be in stand-up comedy, but use it to their advantage to excel, to influence more people, that sort of thing?
Okay, so here's what I think about people who are funny are more likable.
Sure, yeah.
And likability is a big thing in everything.
Can I ask one question right there before you go into the...
Please.
How do you find the line? Because I'll be honest, I know, like, funny people, I'm like, dude, you're not funny anymore. Now you're just annoying. So how do you find the line of, like, I want to be funny, and then it's more likable, I open people up, and then just, okay, I've had enough. Like, my brain hurts at this point. Like, can we take something serious here?
Yeah. That's a good question, man. I don't know what the formula.
I mean, you're level-headed. So I think when it's appropriate to be funny.
Yeah.
And when it's appropriate to...
Yeah, and there's usually context around all of it too, right? So if we came to my house and we're having a drink or we're eating an edible, we're just kind of kicking, just being loose, and we're at a UFC party at my house. And I'm at my house, I could probably get away with more, and you're a guest at my house.
Yeah, the environment, right?
You know what I mean? But if I'm at your house and I know there's maybe some protocol to the way you live your life, I'm not going to try and be offensive just for no reason. I'll probably watch myself a little bit more and be like, I think it's this awareness of playing off of the person in front of you, right? So
the ability to read somebody else.
Yeah,
okay.
be able to read. I don't know if that can be taught or if that's a natural thing. I don't know yet. I haven't given enough thought to it.
I think it can be. I don't know. I think it can be brought to somebody's attention if they're open and receptive to learning how to read people.
Yeah.
If they're oblivious, I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah. So I think likability is huge. And I'm actually trying to decode likability to be a couple of my friends are trying to, like, figure if we could decode what likability is and actually teach it, we think we could help a lot of people.
Let's think about that though for a second, because if you try to decode likability and somebody's trying to quote unquote game it, does it then take away from the quote unquote likability factor?
Well, I mean, everything can be learned. Well, not everything, but most things can be learned, right? So if, so here's a few things that would what are characteristics of likability? If you and I were hanging out as friends, and I talked about myself all the stinking time, you're not gonna like me.
No, of course not.
So likability is like, hey, listen, when you're with somebody, remember to ask them questions. Let them talk. Figure out what they like, and let them tell you about their day. That is a piece of likability. You're just going to go farther in life. So I don't know that that's gaming it. It's just
an awareness of it.
Yeah, you're like, hey.
Yeah, that's true.
So if it's all about you, you're just sucking everything, people are going to stop inviting you places. Yeah. So there's one thing. Not taking your – have you ever met the person – I know you have, so that's kind of a stupid way to open that. But it's a rhetorical – we've all met the guy that is just too sensitive.
Yeah, of course.
You're like, dude, nice schmedium T-shirt. No, bro. And I'm like, dude, I was kidding.
It was a joke. Chill out.
Relax.
Right.
Like, throw something. Because all guys, dude, we love to banter. I want to make fun of your beard.
Right.
I like it, but I gotta razz you about it.
Right.
You want to talk about my tattoo and like,
Yeah.
hey, that was a dumb one. Like, what were you thinking with that? Like, and it's just so there's a piece of likability.
But that builds trust and credibility between people too, right?
Yeah.
Is that I'm a real human being. Like
Yep.
I can give it, I can dish it, I can take it.
Yeah.
So
can that be learned? Can we teach somebody that, hey, when somebody jabs you, don't be quick to defend yourself. Just be like, that's a characteristic of likability.
Yeah. But again, and everything can be taken to the extreme, right?
Yeah.
Because we know somebody who's so hard on themselves. It's like, I can't be around this person anymore because all they do is complain and gripe and woe is me and everything's horrible and the world's going to end and nobody likes to be around that person.
But I really do believe, I agree with you, man. I really do believe likability is a huge reason for a lot of the success and things I've done.
I think that makes sense.
I'm getting on a lot of stages because people like me. I've talked with some other comedians. They're like, listen, we'll take a funny or a less funny guy on the road because we like being around him. We know we're going to be in hotel rooms. We know we're going to be in green rooms. We know we're going to be out, hanging out after the show or before the show. And this guy might crush way harder, but what a diva to be around. This guy crushes a little bit less, but dude, if I'm on a tour bus,
that's the guy
I want
be
that
with.
guy. So I've always thought of myself and thought about this as another like kind of a way to maybe judge where you're at and like how fun would you be if we got stuck in an IKEA overnight?
Oh yeah.
Are we doing wheelie chair races down the thing? Are we building like the coolest forts? Like we're like, okay, we're in the mess. What are we doing now?
What are we doing?
You know what I mean? So those are some things. Again, I don't have a formula, but these are some questions that some friends of mine have been asking, like, because I think it's like a lot of things, like a lot of gigs that have been given to me that obviously I had to have the skill to be able to do what I needed to do, whether it was teaching seminars or whatever. But they're just like, we like Keith.
Yeah,
he's funny to be around. He's gonna crack some jokes, and I don't even really have jokes. Like I know a couple, but it's just more interest in others. I think those are some of the basics that people could like. Here's the other thing: is if I'm guessing a lot of guys listening to this may be in work environments where they're going to have to deal with people that it would be better if they were just likable. Their life would be better if they were just likable. So in some sense, there's an easygoingness to them, but yet in some sense, there's a standard that they hold for themselves and for others.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a boundary that they have. Where is that? I feel like we're talking about gray stuff here. Like I don't know how to define.
Yeah, how do you define it? Yeah.
So it's like I like Ryan, man. I know we're gonna if you and I go to the hockey game, we're gonna have fun.
Yep.
And we may have totally different religious views. We may have totally different stuff about things, but you're not annoying about what you believe, like trying to convince me, and I'm not annoying about what I believe, trying to convince you.
Right.
And I know we can walk hand in hand and just enjoy life.
I don't know about hand in hand.
Well,
I mean
interlocking fingers. Yeah.
Sure.
So I think there's some of that, and it's like, well, who do you want to invite to your party? Well, the people I like hanging out with.
Yeah.
We have this. I know there's this gal that is kind of in our group, and she'll never listen to this podcast. So
we can talk about her.
I can, but she's like the classic example. It's like, all right, she's a part of the group. We're gonna have to invite her, but man, I don't want to talk to her.
Yeah,
and so
it's hard, man.
But we don't want to be that guy.
Of course.
And so, like, nobody wants to be that guy. And here's another thing I think people respect, and that's leadership in a man. And that is, I do this because I like it. Dude, I'll be honest with you, Ryan. Like, when I said I want to do stand-up comedy, I didn't know anybody else doing it. As I started getting along, Garrett Gunderson. Do you know Garrett?
I know of Garrett. I don't know him personally.
Garrett started doing a lot of stand-up. So we became stand-up buddies. And I was just like, hey, I went up this here and this I did. And here, let me send you my set. What did you think? And so I got this new stand-up comic buddy, but he was from the business world as well.
Sure, yeah.
And then I started meeting stand-up comics, but a lot of them they looked at life way different than me. So we weren't really like vibing on the same level. So, and a lot of my friends are like, what do you, dude, you're out till like 11:30. And I'm like, I don't want to be out till 11:30. I'd rather be in bed by 9:30 and up by 4:30. Like, that's my preferred life. Mm-hmm. I'm a morning person. I want to get stuff done. And by 12 noon, I'm like, I just conquered the world, man.
Right.
But that's not the way stand-up comedy. It's a nighttime gig. So, it's there, but there's a leadership in sense. I had a really good friend of mine who loves poker. I mean, none of our friends play poker. This guy made it to like the top the last 12 at the World Series of Poker.
Really?
That's how good he was.
Yeah.
And he loved every Friday down playing poker, high stakes poker, poker, loves poker. And I'm like, I don't like poker at all. I suck at it. I'm sure I could get into it because there's some gamesmanship in it, and you're reading
there's
people.
elements of it, right?
Like I'm like, oh, is he bluffing? Is he not? Like I could see why somebody would get super turned on by that, but I'll probably never play poker in my life.
Yeah.
But I actually respect the fact that he likes something enough that he has pursued it.
Well, and not only pursuit, but just the idea that we are attempting to master something, right? Is that we're trying to excel and trying to delve into that world and learn all the intricacies of what it is we're doing.
Yeah, man. So I think that's admirable, and I think that makes people more likable because there's a respect. Like, oh, he's going after what he wants.
Right.
There's a lot of respect there. I saw this, and I know we're coming up on our time here. Do you ever remember that show called, I think it was called Bro Code?
No, I don't remember it.
Dude, it was on MTV2. It was so funny. I mean, it's worth going back and watching.
Okay.
There's some really...
I'll check it out.
And it's ran by comedians.
Okay.
So they're just talking about what is bro code and if you break it and what does that look like and what does a good ass night look like, and they would like interview like celebrities, what's a good ass night look like, and there's funny people like this one guy's like, I love everything on the grill, birthday cake on the grill, burgers on the grill, Cheerios on the grill. It's like it's dude, guys just love the show.
Yeah.
But there was a gal on there, I can't remember her name, drop dead gorgeous, in the limelight, and she goes, I don't care if the guy I'm dating is rich or not. I care that he has ambition and drive and he's going after something. That's attractive because I think a likability and attractiveness kind of go hand in hand.
I'm sure of it.
Yeah, right?
I'm sure of it.
So I think what she said was, it was like such a, like, that's right. Because there are really pretty gals that will date like losers that we would think because they're sleeping on couch, but they're going after something. And then maybe eventually one day they'll pop and break and become rich or famous or neither or both.
Right.
But there's something that makes somebody like somebody that's struggling after something.
Yeah, that has purpose and direction. I think that is attractive. Definitely.
So I don't think we gave anybody the formula, but I think we kind of flirted around with some ideas.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's why humor and being funny and learning the concepts of what it means to be likable, I think will be one of the greatest skills that will pay you the highest in this world. And I think in fulfillment, joy, happiness, and actually money.
Right on, man.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, let's wind down. I know you're actually leaving. You're going to do, I think, some improv.
It's called The Improv.
Oh, it's called, okay. And so, but you're doing a comedy
it's stand-up.
set.
The Improv's, the Brea Improv.
Right, okay. And then you've got, I think, the Comedy Store, later? Next week?
In 2 days.
In 2 days, okay.
Yeah.
So you're busy, man. I love it.
I love it. It's fun.
That's awesome. So let me ask you a couple of questions then as we wind down. The first
Sure.
one is, what does it mean to be a man?
What does it mean to be a man? I think historically it has meant the leader. We grew up, we live in a Judeo-Christian society, and a man has been a leader. He has been somebody who has, and I agree with actually a lot of these things. So I think the definition for me of what a man would be, I actually love your, preside, protect, and provide. I like those a lot. I think a man is a leader, and he says, what's not only the best for me, but what's the best for those around me, and how can I get everybody to where they want to go? And so, like, as a boss, I go, what do my employees want out of their life? They didn't grow up at 9 years old and say, I can't wait to work for Keith Yackey. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But some of them, like my very best friend who I've known since 14 years old, he works for me, he's worked for me for years, and he is a number 2. That's all he wants to be. He wants to support me in my mission to create whatever I want to create. So I think a man is a leader that says, it's not just about me, but how can I help you? How can I help you further your joy and your happy? And how can I lead by example by doing those things and going after what I want? So I think there's a driven and ambition to a man. That would be my short definition.
Right on. I love it, man. All right, how do we connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, find out about the shows, all that fun stuff?
I pretty much post everything on Instagram.
Okay.
At Keith Yackey on Instagram, and or KeithYackey.com. But I'd just say Instagram. It's
Cool.
just the easiest where I'm most connected.
It is, yeah. That's
Yeah.
where you're at. So we'll sync it all up so the guys can connect.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh,
the
you
show.
bet, man.
Like, it's been such. I mean, I enjoy our interaction that we've had over the last year on Instagram and stuff like that. But I want to honor you for what you're doing, and I just think it's really freaking cool, dude.
Much
And so,
appreciated.
thanks for
I
having
feel
me
the same way. Is we haven't had this discussion, and I think it's something that's integral. And just to be able to have the conversation with you has been good, man. So
Thanks, bro.
get after it this week.
I'm gonna.